I'm from Alberta. My father was from Blood Reserve in Alberta, and I was really educated and brought up in residential school, St. Joseph's Convent in Red Deer. And although I wanted to become an architect, I couldn't, I didn't have that opportunity in Canada because I was told I didn't have the family background to be a royal architect. So I went down as far away from Canada as I could get at the time without speaking Spanish. I ended up in Texas, and there I went to school and graduated with honors, but I was also involved in human rights when the South was totally segregated. And so the vice president of the University of Texas, he was head of political science, and he encouraged me to take on student rights and human rights, and did a good job of training me in that regard. So when I came back to Alberta, because I felt there was unfinished business that I had to deal with in Canada, I was asked by the chiefs of Alberta to take on Pierre Elliott Trudeau in his white paper. So at the time, we were not allowed to follow our traditional ways. In fact, they weren't, the elders were not allowed to practice their ceremonies in the reserves and whatever. And so the elders, so Robert Smallboy and the elders and traditional people moved from the reserves to the mountains, the Rocky Mountains and the Kootenay Plains. And there they went through a lot of hardship and living in tents and whatever to preserve their traditional ways. There's such things as that our elders, in some cases, the people in the community, following the wishes of the people at the time that were governing them, sometimes nailed up the cabins of the elders and burned them alive. And that was the kind of environment that we had to deal with. So the traditional elders decided that they would live in the mountains away from everything. So it took quite an effort to come there. And so I was asked by the chiefs of Alberta at the time to go to another university, to go through another way of learning, another way of knowledge. And so I camped with the elders in the mountains from time to time to learn about my roots, about my traditions, and actually put them in practice. Because when I went to University of Texas, I took cultural anthropology, and when I walked in the classroom, the teacher said, oh, we have a Blackfoot on our class. And I'm looking around with this Blackfoot. He says, you. My whole thesis was on the Blackfoot Nation. I know all their traditions, their culture, and everything else. So I learned about my culture at the University of Texas. And, but to experience it. And our culture is just amazing and beautiful. And in the South, when they had so much problems and everything, that teacher wanted to teach me everything he knew about their culture because he lived with our people, lived with the Blackfoot Nation. He knew all about the traditions, the ceremonies, everything. So I learned that at the university, which was denied to me in Canada. My language just not denied to me in Canada. So So in experiencing the traditions in the mountains with the elders, going on the fasts, the ceremonies, the sun dances, all of these experiences. And also, the elders decided that because the stress of being in the dominant culture was so much so that I was having terrible stress and health problems. So they decided that what they would do is deprogram me. Totally wipe out all the colonization, all the colonial mentality, everything that came from outside. They decided to deprogram me. And it was painful. Painful, you know, to be able to totally deprogram a person from how they're brought up in a residential school and how they're brought up in that way. And so what I learned from my elders, the very traditional elders that were, you know, that were really the old traditional guard, the old people with their stories, because the books of knowledge of our people are our elders. We're a non-literary culture, and culture of thousands of years have been passed down. And they are our books of knowledge. And I had the absolutely fortunate time in my life to be surrounded by these books of knowledge. And so I lived with them, became them, studied under them, and and they taught me all the ceremonies and the healing lodges and spiritual lodges. I am so happy that I was able to experience this. So in my heart, I'm Anishinaabe. In my heart and in my soul, I'll never be civilized. So I wanted to explain to you the two world views. The world views, two world views. The hierarchical society, which is the world, this world, is based on power and control. It keeps everyone in line in the structure by fear. That's how it controls people, by fear. The individual must find their place in the hierarchy and conform to the structure and the laws that govern it, and only those of those at the top are considered noble. It operates by laws created by man. That's the structure that this society lives in. The Indigenous worldview is centered on individual responsibility, respect, and self-worth. It's based on peace, harmony, love, and contribution. And it's about sharing. In our culture, it's mandatory to share. It is represented by a circle where each person is an individual, is considered noble, and power resides within the individual. It follows natural law. Next. The structure, the colonial structure, is based on a patriarchal system, placing men at the center of power. It requires man to get dominion over nature and his own nature. It is his responsibility to uphold the hierarchical system and seek his place as close to the top of the hierarchy as possible. It is a competitive society of winners and losers. Man is required to sacrifice his life if the hierarchy demands it. The man is the head of the nuclear family. That is the colonial system. The Indigenous system Indigenous society is an extended family. It's primarily a matriarchal society, or more, rather than matriarchal, it's the wrong word. In China, we came up with another word because I just come back from China. And it's a matrifocal society, which encourages cooperation rather than competition. It emphasized living in harmony with nature and our own nature. The children are the center of the community. As the mother is dedicated to serve the children, the father is dedicated to serve the family. He would naturally give his life to protect his family. Typically, the women chose the leaders from observing the behavior of their children. And we've been going back through the ages. My wife is Basque from northern Spain. Her history goes back 20,000 years. They lived in caves while Europe was under a mile of ice. And they have paintings. Actually, they hunted buffalo. They have buffalo, paint, and elk, and all these things in their caves. Her language is Mesolithic. And it's structured. It's like Algonquin. She speaks her language. To preserve her culture, it's been quite an effort for them. But she speaks her language. They were matrifocal. Actually, frankly, they still are. She's the boss. And rightfully so. And, you know, it's, and so, and then when I come back from China, there were other matrifocal societies there. And of course, in China, they encourage people to, and support them to preserve their language, their culture, their territories, everything else. It's quite a bit different than Canada. And I'm working with the Indigenous people of China. But also, their whole matrifocal culture is preserved. So I'm working with them. Well, it was really neat to be surrounded by a culture that was matrifocal and practicing it. Next. And also, you know, they talk about all these murdered women of our First Nations. Thousands of our women are being murdered. Why? You're trying to impose a patriarchal system on a matrifocal system. I mean, it took 500 years to do that in Europe. So the problem is, you know, the apartheid and genocide of our people. Like, because we have a different worldview. And our worldview is not accepted by the patriarchal system of power and control. Our worldview is an absolute threat to the status quo. So here, the hierarchical world view is about good and evil. It's binary. It's dualism. It is a binary world that gives power to the evil within us. You know, like the devil made us do it. We're not quite responsible. We are born with original sin and must seek a salvation to be at one with the Creator. Man created laws that define evil, and hierarchical organizations around these definitions. There is an assumption that we are all not fully responsible for our actions because evil is so powerful. Because of fear, we give the responsibility of charting our lives to others who we regard more responsible. there is a great stress to conform to the norms of society. So that what we do is we believe in this hierarchical worldview that power is not here, power is with him. That's all. We got to have somebody that's powerful to, so we're not real people, we're like sheeple. And we have to follow the leader, like Donald Trump. That is true expression of the dominant culture, where we feel somebody else will be more responsible than we to chart our lives. We can't chart them because we've taken that responsibility out of everybody and we rest it with the church or the state. The church will speak for us and tell us what to do. The state will tell us what to do. So instead of being people, we become sheeple. In the Indigenous worldview, people are beautiful spiritual beings of light, housed in flesh, connected to the Creator and all living beings, as well as the universe and beyond. There is no evil. One does not need to fear themselves, nor the Creator, which is embodiment of love and caring. There is a belief in following one's own heart and one's own higher self, for we are God-like beings, and we are basically loving and caring creatures. There is only good, and a crooked good that needs to be straightened out. We're not going to even acknowledge evil by giving it a name. It's like that movie, Star Wars, don't give power to the dark side, Luke, they're fighting. Like, in essence, like evil is created by these structures, and our people don't see it that way. We see everything holistically. There's no right or wrong. In China, it's yin and yang, they're all the same. You can't have light without dark. They're connected. It's not this way or that way. It's not you and me. We're one. So we are fully responsible to straighten out our own negative thinking, or we'll give ourselves a headache and make ourselves ill as well as those around us. We may affect our whole environment by the way we think. We are fully responsible to keep our minds in a good way. So it's a different way of thinking, where you're totally and completely responsible for all your actions, what you do, and everything else. Totally responsible. You can't point your fingers, oh, it's not my fault, like Nixon. The fingers all point the other way. You're responsible for your life. It's a different way of thinking. Next. So, the hierarchical worldview believes that a child is a tabula rasa, like a clean slate. Knowledge is like a pitcher of water. You must pour it into the individual until you are completely filled with outside knowledge. So you get this big pitcher of knowledge, you pour it in the ear of a child, you fill them up with all this stuff. Deemed knowledgeable by this society and conform rigidly to the guidelines of its institutions, then you are given a diploma, a degree that places you in the level of the hierarchy which is predetermined by society. So, to gain credibility, you seek the knowledge of others, and any contribution you make, you must be legitimized by those deemed more knowledgeable than you. At university, they totally dehumanize you. Like, if you put your own knowledge in it, you'll get an F. You have to have a bibliography, you have to find knowledge, some whatever, to support the knowledge, your argument, everything else. So you're taught more and more and more and more that knowledge is not here, knowledge is somewhere else. you know. In our culture, how we're taught is that the Great Spirit can hold all of man's knowledge in the palm of his hand. He can put all of knowledge on computer chips, whatever. That's what's definable. Okay. And also, you can define what you don't know. Like, I don't know how to apply a 747. But what you don't know, you don't even know. That's from his fingers to the edge of the universe. Now the elders say, you want to play in that little domain of what you know? That world has already been created. That knowledge is like books in the library, all RIP. It's all created knowledge. We human beings have the gift of creativity. So where should you play? In that little domain of what you know? Or are you willing to leap out in that world out there of which you don't know, you don't even know? Power rests not in what you know. Power rests in that domain out there. That's the land of the eagle. That's where the shaman plays. That's where true creativity comes from. If we are to create a better world than we have right now, which is destroyed by our greed and our way of living, we have to think and create a whole new way, a whole new paradigm. And you seek knowledge from within yourself and the Creator that guides you. Like species learned. You are, in a sense, the grandchild of all your ancestors that came before you. You are the grandparents of all future generations after you. Within you is the knowledge of all the past, the present, and the future. It all resides in you. And it's up to you to unconceal it, because it's already in you. All your heritage of your past, and because you're the grandfather of all the future generations, that knowledge is within you too. So when we go, we don't go to a library. The elder puts us out. Somewhere in virgin land, we sit with a pipe, we fast, we ask our ancestors for the information to guide us. And they come to us and guide us. So that's a different reality, you see, than that reality. Next. So the hierarchical societies create powerful technologies that force competition and stresses that each person excel within these created structures. So seeking knowledge and invention can be a powerful tool for society's livelihood. So, I mean, I was the first to totally computerize, because, you know, and I saw, oh, they've developed a computer with all the coordinates that, of the planet, and they could zoom on the back pocket of a Russian in red square and plant an atomic bomb. I can use that for building buildings. So I went back to Texas, where anything is possible. I said, can you program computers for me? And they said, sure, we'll program your computers. So we were the first to totally computerize in the 70s. And a museum that I did, history museum I did in the early 80s, all done on the computer. But in a sense, if you're free of this kind of tyranny that is created by the structures of power in our institutions. The Indigenous worldview emphasized creativity and ingenuity, balancing the needs of the people with the resources they need to survive. It requires a basic knowledge of the environment and the reality grounded in understanding one's place in the universe. It regards the hierarchical worldview as an illusion that has little relevance to the true nature of man and his relationship to his environment and his creator. To reject who you are, to fit in this illusion, is a rejection of the wondrous being that God has created. One must celebrate life and embrace and love oneself, for only through love will you become a knowledgeable being. Our elders say, the soft power of love is much greater than the hard power of force. So that's the difference between our cultures. The dominant culture is one of force, power, and control. And the culture of our Anishinaabe people is one of love, caring, sharing, and harmony. So why are we separate? Why do we not have respect for our rights, our laws? Why do we live under apartheid and genocide, which is a crime against humanity as defined by the United Nations? Why are we isolated and have no rights and our lands taken away and our culture and our religion, our language? Why? I'm not any different than any one of you. Why can't I practice my ceremonies? And why are not my sacred sites respected? Like the sacred circle in the Ottawa Valley, which is for 20,000 years our sacred site. What about the islands in the river, shaped like our sacred pipe? Why are the city of Ottawa say, you have no rights as an individual, as an Indigenous person to your sacred site, to your sacred ceremonies, to your sacred areas? Like, why? Am I any different than any one of you? We are all the same. So, so this is a different worldview. I made this out one time for a minister of the government, I don't know, 10 years ago, because he said, why do Indian people want a different kind of education than the great education that we're providing for them? So I said, well, okay, I'll let you know. Because I don't regard much of the institutional kind of education all the way through, from one grade, one kindergarten, whatever, to university, as anything else but programming people to be sheep and not individuals. I have 29 doctors. What is it? How many doctors? Do I have 19? So I must have some kind of credibility. So next, let me talk about interconnectedness in the seventh direction. So in working with communities and planning communities, I just thought I would share with you a basic philosophy of how I come into a community and work with the elders and particularly the women. Like, it's the women that are the center of the chiefs and councils that are a product of colonialism and whatever do not really represent anybody, but the government, they don't really represent our people at all. And so, so I like working with everyone. I mean, the chief and council are people too. But if they sit in a circle with the rest of us and everybody treating noble, then that works. But we don't operate in a hierarchy. Like I'm speaking right now on behalf of the Anishinaabe people. Yeah? No, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't have the right to do that. I'm speaking to you from Doug Cardinal. I'm sovereign over me only. And I can't speak for anybody else because that's arrogant. Each person has a right to speak for themselves. Leadership is supporting the leadership in others. Power is something that you give away to others. You don't draw power to yourself. Anybody said, vote for me, I need all your power so I can represent you and speak on your behalf. Are you out of your mind? Anyway, let's talk about interconnections in 7 directions. Next. Just to give you an insight into our worldview. Since all life is connected, we follow the natural law of the basic forces of nature: earth, air, fire, water. Next. We are an intrinsic part of all life on this planet, no matter how insignificant it may appear to us. See this little being here on this flower, that's Manitousis. The Great Spirit is Manitou. But all the little creatures, just the Great Spirit and all of life that flows through everything is all one. We're not disconnected, we're all connected. I remember showing quantum physics to the elders, how everything is all connected throughout all the universe and everything else. And I did a big thing, video, everything, and the elders were there. And after, they said to me, so? Like, of course. But anyway, that little creature is called Manitousis. That's like a little part of Great Manitou. Because even the microbes in our gut keep us alive. Without them, we're not even alive. So we have to respect all life. It's all life is one. We're not separate from nature. We are nature. So you pollute a river, you pollute yourself. If you kill a forest, you kill yourself. This whole idea that we're separate from nature, like, what planet are we from? We actually are from planet Earth. Next. So when we surrender to our higher self, we can connect ourselves to our life force. This force is connected to the life force of every living being on the planet, as well as the Earth itself and the universe beyond. So, the problem is the society, the dominant culture and everything, it's all about ego. And that disconnects you from everything, because it disconnects you from your fellows around you, from the animals, the birds. Our elders say, when you really want to learn about everything around you, be at par with a blade of grass. You're not any more important than a blade of grass. Maybe the universe will open up to you and you start communicating with things around you. So everybody, in the dominant culture, because they're all so insecure, because they're sort of all programmed to believe that they have no value at all, they're a bunch of sheep, they're all screaming for attention, so the whole society is all based on their egos. We disconnect ourselves from the source and disconnect ourselves from each other and from all life itself. When we communicate with the Creator, we pray in the 6 directions: east, south, west, north, heaven, earth. The symbols of all of the forces of creation with which we connect ourselves. It's a medicine wheel. Actually, I was involved in designing a hospital in Sioux Lookout and worked with the Ojibwe elders. their teachings, the animals in the four directions, the colors in the four directions, and the medicine wheel. The whole hospital design was, the master plan was a medicine wheel. So that when the people flew in and looked down at the hospital, they saw we marked the earth with respect to their culture. And it helped right away in the healing process. Because hospitals don't heal you. You heal you. Your cells regenerate. You know, you cut yourself, doctor doesn't heal you, you heal you. So, it's the other way of thinking. Somebody else even heals you. You know, your cells, they make your cells go so that they heal? No. I mean, we're taught that, you know, that all of the things that we need are outside instead of here. We're taught that when you connect to the six directions, all of creation, okay? The four directions, heaven and earth. When you connect to all of creation, you become part of all of creation. You become as powerful as all of creation because you're one with creation. You're not separate from creation, you're one from creation. The whole power of the universe sits right here. My grandmothers gave me this to remind me that. Our power rests right here in our hearts. We are the seventh direction. We are the seventh direction. Next. We're an intrinsic part of creation, and we are at one with the Creator. Thus, on this planet, we are co-creators and have been given the power and gift of creativity. You see? We're amazing creatures. Next. We're all godlike beings. Each one of us are godlike beings. We have unlimited power. Oh, I think we'll create a flying machine and fly. We don't have to evolve wings. We do it. Oh, I think we'll fly faster in sound. We'll do that. Oh, let's fly the moon. We'll do that. Let's blow up one city with one atomic bomb. We'll do that. You see, we have unlimited power. And because we have that gift of creativity. The church and state does not want us to know that. Next. Only human beings have been given the power to create. Next. The Creator may have created this magnificent planet with wondrous forms of life from which we evolved. But we human beings have the power to destroy this marvelous creation and all of life itself. That's the magnitude of our power. We have the power to destroy this whole planet. That's how powerful we are. And we're starting to do it because of our ignorance and lack of love for each other and lack of love for all life. Next. Connecting to the seventh direction requires us to be respectful of all life, including our own. It requires that we embrace the soft power of love rather than the hard power of force initiated by our ego. We can only be connected when we understand that the soft power of love is much greater than the hard power of force. So next. When we are aligned to the Creator and we're connected to creation, connected to everything, we become next powerful, magical beings clothed in flesh. We truly become sorcerers because we're connected to the source. That's what sorcerer means. You connect to the source of all creation. You connect with the Creator. To all life, you become a magical being clothed in flesh. You become a sorcerer. Like our shamans, they're sorcerers. So when we embrace this awesome power, we must take full responsibility in how we exercise it. Next. The universe is all powerful. When you are connected, you become a channel for that energy. Each individual has the power to make a difference in the course that humanity takes. It is the creative efforts of each individual that determines the destiny of our future. It's crazy what we're doing, what this country is doing, what industry is doing, what governments are doing. It's insanity. We must plan for the future of our life givers, for without them, our future is in jeopardy. We don't plan for the future of the rivers, of the fish. You don't plan for the future of the animals, the birds, the trees, and whatever. If you don't plan for their future, what do we have? How can we survive? The planning is so ridiculous. We're just planning for people. They teach planning in university. That's not planning. That's planning for human beings to literally destroy the environment around them and leave nothing but, nothing for future generations. When you plan, you have to plan for the future of all life around you. Or else you don't have a future. What are you going to eat? Money? Even with salt and pepper, it doesn't taste that good. So that's the difference. I mean, this so-called planning, that's not planning. Planning a subdivision, that's not planning. Next. Land use planning. Okay, let's try that. Okay. For example, I was asked, number one, to do land use planning for this community. So they, after 100 years, they got back 70,000 acres of land. They said, well, this is Kamloops. Please don't plan it like Kamloops. I mean, we got to plan our land for 7 generations. So then they said, first of all, you have to plan all your cultural areas. These are the cultural areas that we plan. So the elders went out and showed me for hundreds of years, literally thousands of years, how they used those particular areas. So we mapped that out. And then the next one was the traditional land use. How we use the traditional land use and laying out how we respected the land and how we used it. And how that land was a resource and how it had to be looked after. So then the historical areas, that each area had historical particular areas and sacred areas that had to be served. Next. And then they looked at special areas like for teaching areas. And they even went to the extent of saying these particular areas that we use for teaching, we want to protect and preserve not only these animals' future, but their paths, their way of life. Like these all paths next. All the paths next to the waterways. And how are we going to protect the waterways so that these animals are all respected? So they even planned for the future of all these animals and respected their paths and their lifestyle and everything like that. And then the water, they said, well, there's some rules that the buffer zone is so many meters, but the elders say, no, it needs 150 meters because we have to be concerned about the beaver, and that we need to make sure that all the water that comes to the river is purified by the wetland plants and everything. And then when we looked at, okay, where are we going to put people? Where are we going to put people so that they don't destroy all these other resources? So let's put the people over here, so because we don't want them to destroy these species at risk, or these plants, or these special herbs, or these special trees. Let's put the people there. You plan for man and nature for 7 generations. You respect people, you respect the trees, the herbs, the medicine, the fish, the birds, the animals. They have to have a future, because without their future, we don't have a future. That's how you plan. Is that taught in university? No. I actually, to get a team that would help me with this whole planning process, I got some planners, Buddhists from Japan, because they're taught to respect all life. They fully understood what I was doing. But not the intelligentsia of the Western culture at all. So this is how to plan. Next. Even in planning this subdivision, they said, well, look what they've done here. They plan everything around the sewage system, and all the water runoff from the roofs and everything, and the roads and everything is dumped into the river, and they're killing the salmon. That's no way to plan. And we should plan ourselves not around the sewage system. There are other parts of the body, like the heart and the spirit, rather than the anus, that we should plan around the people, the women and children. And why are we putting all the water in pipes and dumping them in the water? Why can't we run the water on the land and then have wetlands that purify the water before it goes into the river, and follow the natural terrain of the land rather than engineer it like this, and connect all nature together rather than make it into a bunch of little parks and disconnect nature, divide and conquer nature, but let's have nature run through the source. And then here, if we have nature running through it, well, then we can have pedestrian walkways joining everything and join the whole community in a park. And because it's horse country, why can't one of our kids take a pony to school without ever crossing a road? It's totally separate vehicular and pedestrian traffic. Be concerned about people, be concerned about children, be concerned about elders. Next. So we zoned it differently. We use the same system as, like the city, whatever, they have their systems. But we did it in a loving and caring way, not in power and control, in a dominate nature kind of thing, but in a caring way. Next. So we did this design in a cul-de-sac, so that we could separate the vehicular and the pedestrian traffic, and to have all the water drain and the traffic and people be able to walk from their houses through a park rather than a street. So we thought we were doing a pretty good job. These, we're a bunch of guys, and we thought we were doing a good job. And then the women said, okay, you've done a pretty good job, you guys, but it's still too patriarchal. Because you're still doing things in rows. You're doing it in a way that separate the women from each other so that you can control them. You see? You're still doing patriarchal system of separating the women. And when you separate the women so you can dominate them, what you're doing is you're isolating the family, so the children are all driving us crazy in the houses, the women are saying, because they can't get together with other children. And that's not going to serve our children, because our children are social beings, they want to relate to each other. And so, and also when you think about it, these roads and everything were designed in the industrial age to separate people so that they won't get together and cause a problem to the head of the manufacturing plants. So it's all about dividing and conquering the family and putting people in rows so that they can't communicate and get together. So it's all done, you know, to control people. So women said, you know, pretty good, but not good enough. They said, this is the way we want our community plan. Next. We want the children in the center because they want to be raised and they're social beings and they have to learn how to relate to each other. We want the mothers around them and then the automobiles around that. We want to put the mother between the child. And that's the way we want to plan our communities, around the women and children. Get it, you guys? So we then turned it around. And then we designed next. So then we planned the whole community in that way, next. So just to give you an idea that everything you learned about planning, everything you learned about how you should lay out certain things, everything you know, trash it. Like, because it's all, you know, colonial mentality. People of Oshiboogamoo that I worked with 25 years ago or whatever, their land was mined, clear-cut, and they were suffering from arsenic poisoning from the gold mines. The water was, and they had nothing. They lived in tar paper shacks with nothing, no rights. They weren't even called a people. They were just trashed and taken over by other people. No rights, no nothing. So anyway, the people all got together, and there was only one way, and that's to go up, you know, I mean, when you're totally trashed. So this is our traditional Ashaptuan, and the elders all got together, and there's the chief there, there's myself. And they said, we want a village for our people, but we want to plan it our way. And so they had this vision. Next. And they gave me their vision. The thing about it was that I took their whole vision that the elders gave me for their vision, for their village, and I went back to the office, I designed it, and then I came back to them, presented to them. And I said, you have to understand that this is my interpretation of your village. And what do I know? Like, I'm this Blackfoot from Alberta, educated in Texas with an office in Ottawa. Like, you lived here for so many thousand years, like what do I know? Like, if you don't participate to evolve this village to serve your needs, it's not going to serve you. Like, I need your input. Like, I need your criticism. And they said, well, you know, what, you know, we don't have that education. Look at all, you know what you're doing. I said, no, I don't. Like in that movie Avatar, my head was empty, not full. You know, like as an expert, experts come to community, they have all the answers for our people. Give me a break, you have no answers. None, nada. the best you can do is have an empty head and learn. So I said to people, like, forget it, you know. You have to do this. It is your responsibility. And then they felt quite comfortable, and they tore me apart like shreds. They were like piranhas. And I was sitting there, you know, writing all of their criticism, because a lot of people don't know what they want, but they know what they don't want. And that's very valuable information, and you don't need to argue with them and say, oh no, you're wrong. They're right, because they're the ones living there. They have the sovereignty of felt needs. So they criticized him. They went back to the office, redesigned the whole thing, came back to the community, and they're all waiting for me, all 500 of them. And put it on all board. They come in, and the chief says, okay, you're responsible. And then they let me have it again. Right. I went through this process 8 times, back, forth. And finally the middle-aged people said, we're looking after the elders, we're looking after this is impractical, this isn't right, or whatever. And then finally the young people said, that's okay for you guys, but we're the future, you know, and this is the way we feel, and whatever. Until one time I came in with all my models, drawings, everything, and put it on the walls, and people were all looking at them a long time, and they all sat down. So then the chief said, okay, now, input, come on. And total silence, long time silence. And the chief said to me, well, Doug, you finally got it. And the people stood up, said, yeah, that's our community. And they built it and won a United Nations award as a village of the future, and were featured in Hanover, Germany to present their village at Expo 2000. So that's what it takes. Because the people know what they want. They don't need somebody else telling them what to do. It's arrogance to have people that have been here thousands of years being told what to do on their land. And so, yeah. And so, it's a circle in the 4 directions. Heaven and earth. That's the creative center. See? There's Shopdwan in the center. The cultural center is there now. We opened the culture center a few years ago there for all of James Bay Cree. They decided to put it in this village. It has a district heating system. A boiler that takes the sawdust from the mine and everything, and it heats every building in the community. And so this is the kind of thing that they came up with. And we supported. Do you think we have the technology to do this? Yeah, we'll get this from Sweden. We'll get this from wherever. Do you think we can do this? Yes, we can do this. We can go to the moon and back. Like Dream. We'll follow the requirements. Houses had to be built much, better insulated houses, because we were using a district heating system. You couldn't build the crappy houses that are being built now, the stick-built houses that are unhealthy and everything else. We had to build better housing to be able to use the latest energy techniques. And they're going strong. They're strong. They created their own jobs, opportunities. The first thing we did was build a business center so they could be all entrepreneurs. I mean, we're always entrepreneurs, our people. We were never wards of a state. And that's what has been forced onto the people. Next. So this is the village that did. You see, it's a cultural center we have there now. And next. And always, there's the Abel Bosom, the chief. The planners and the architects should be behind the chief, not in front of him. These were my client, the beautiful people, spiritual, beautiful people. Why are the beautiful, spiritual people put in ghettos with no rights? Why do we have apartheid in Canada? Am I any different than any of you? No. Next. This is the Cree Cultural Center that we did to house the language and the culture to teach the children in the future that what was denied in my generation. Their language, their culture, their values, their spiritual values. Next. Next. So I just wanted to have you understand that we Anishinaabe peoples have a great deal to contribute to society. We shouldn't be marginalized and ghettoized and have our rights, our lands, our traditions and everything taken from us and continue to be taken from us. We have a great contribution to make. Because one of the teachings on the prophecies is that we must teach the immigrant culture to love the earth as we love the earth. We have to teach them to love the clear waters and the mountain streams and the winds we feel across our brow. We have to teach them to love as we love, because our very survival depends on that task. If we let others destroy our environment, we destroy ourselves. So not only for our people, but for all people, we have to teach the immigrant culture to love as we love, because we've been here thousands of years, and theirs is just a short time. We've survived great hardship, terrible survival we've gone through in the last 150 years. But we are a great people, the true people of this land. And the contribution that we'll make in the future will be even greater than the past. And that's the destiny of our Anishinaabe people. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And for people in the region, the deck will be put on GCpedia following the presentation. We have time for a few questions. I'm going to start on the line or in a boardroom if somebody has something they'd like to jump in and ask. Everybody's on mute, so I'm not sure maybe they didn't unmute. No, then maybe we'll start in the room then.
Thank you so much for just for your words, which I think in and of itself just left me with a feeling of the work that needs to be done. And in our department, which of course I don't need to tell you, is a department where we are within a hierarchical structure. I wonder what your perspectives are and what your experience has been in transforming hierarchical cultures towards an Indigenous worldview. Because I think that as we move forward in reconciliation, we have to be mindful here that the Indigenous worldview is a worldview and whose teachings has a lot to inform us rather than the other way around, which I think as a lot of public servants, we come here wanting to help Indigenous peoples as opposed to work in partnership and learn. So I'm just curious about your perspectives on that.
I think that what I've been seeing in my lifetime is the change in the role of women. Like my mother was a non-person, and she had limited opportunities. And you know, women didn't even have the vote. And so what I see is changes in the whole structure of society by having women be in meaningful positions and changing the hierarchical worldview, which is primarily a way that males think. Like we're males, all male creatures are territorial and they're adversarial, and you know, like watch the way their rams each other and have to show their dominance and control and power. And then we always understood that as Anishinaabe people, we're not animals. And that's why we had such respect for the women. And so I feel having the women take their rightful place in the structure of society humanizes the society. And it's quite a threat to the patriarchal systems. And the more patriarchal they are, as you just turn on the media and see, the more, the structures of power, patriarchal power, are threatened. But I see the women are just going ahead anyway. They're just changing the world. And more power to the women, you know. Because I think that's going to change, because women are not like men in the way they deal with each other, whatever. Women work in cooperation and whatever. And also women are more connected because of their cycles. They're not only connected to Mother Earth, they're connected to the moon. And that connects them to the universe, just by their biology and their cycles. So women are much more connected, and they're connected to life because they carry a little one in their womb. They carry, and they nurture. So I think that when women take the rightful place in this society, it'll make substantial changes.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to hear you speak again, and a real honor. We're in the National Capital Region, so I wanted to ask a particular question. I think over the last few decades, we've done a very good job of ensuring that our national institutions include Indigenous knowledges and histories, and I think we've done a better job over the last few decades of doing that. But I guess the question I have for you is, when are we going to build the national institution that is, Indigenous-led? I feel like it's really missing in this national capital region.
Yeah. Well, right now, I'm working with Mark O'Neill, and he's got scholars right over across Canada, and they're rewriting Canadian history. When I did the museum 30 years ago, Canadian history started from contact, European contact. And now I've just redesigned the whole history hall and exhibit designers and everything, and it'll be open this year. And our history in Canada will start from the last ice age, like 20,000 years ago, which will include our Indigenous history. So I see that as a great step. And also, whereas when I was younger, we couldn't have our language and culture and whatever. Right now, like my children, my young one, he can help me with the lodges and everything else. And we have people coming in. And so I think that what we have to do, though, is you have to understand Ottawa was our Anishinaabe culture and center for 20,000 years. Ottawa was our sacred circle. That's where the river Ottawa from the west flows to the east, and then the Rideau and the Gatineau comes in. You have rivers coming here from the four directions, and you have the sacred islands there that is shaped like a sacred pipe, where they have ceremonies. We always had ceremonies there for thousands of years. And so this was our center. That's why they chose that as a capital, because it was always our capital. So we have the Anishinaabe from the west, where I'm from, the Anishinaabe from the east. All some 85 nations used this as the center. The other thing I noticed in China when I was there, just a couple of months ago, is that their culture of their Indigenous people is the same as our culture. I was at a matrifocal conference of all matrifocal societies. The Dene people of Canada were there. The Dene people of China were there, speaking the same language. And I worked with people there that have the same language and cultures. And Xi'an, the old capital, they showed me a new museum of a village 6,000 years ago. It had the same architectural forms as the James Bay Cree and the Shuswap Nation that I work with. The same architectural forms. They're the same people. They have the same culture, the same philosophy. Talk about all life is sacred, and designing would share my planning, saying, you're talking Chinese to us. That's our culture. So now they want to be able to develop a relationship with our Indigenous people. The Moso princess, who is head of all the of her people who are matriarchal, matrifocal, matrilineal, like really in charge. She came to my lodge, and in the lodge, when the spirit came, it opened to her ancestors. She says, our ancestors are the same. So, in the world now where communication is much stronger, we'll see that we have to change our thinking and the way we treat our Indigenous people and maybe take some lessons from other countries. I'm having fun working with them. I was I was asked to climb this mountain and be on top of this mountain. There was this elder there, and he was standing there in a circle facing east. He was praying in the 6 directions, heaven and earth, praying about all life is sacred, saying the same prayers. And they translated them all to me, and at the end he came to me and says, "Is there any difference between our cultures?" I said, "No, they're exactly the same. It's just that nation to nation means that we are a nation and never have given up our sovereignty. We bow to no one. As an Anishinaabe, only bow to the Creator. And we don't bow to any other human being. Nation to nation means that we respect other nations. We honor them to be who they are. But we maintain ourselves as nations. So nation to nation is speaking, the Crown speaking to our nation. There is an agreement, 1763, I think it is.
1763.
Yeah. So that we should be respected as a nation. And we should be treated with respect, our language, our culture, and our lands. We don't want to give up our lands and our territories and our identity to be under the Crown. Even the Queen, you know, when I did the First Nations University in Regina, the Queen sent her son to open the building. And then when Saskatchewan celebrated a 100-year anniversary, they invited the Queen to come to Regina. She bypassed all protocol, went to the First Nations University with a stone from her castle, and said to the traditional people, "Our houses are united." There was an agreement by my great-grandmother, Queen Victoria, respecting your rights as nations. This Queen respects my great-grandmother's agreements with you. Not reported in Canada, not reported by the government, not reported in the press. So, you know, like, we dishonor the Crown by practicing apartheid and genocide to our people. That dishonors the Crown. So we're not subjects to the Crown. We never will be. We're free people. Where does the democracy in the United States come from? Actually, from our elders who passed the Haudenosaunee brothers. The great law of peace. Benjamin Franklin was the Indian agent for the Haudenosaunee people. He took our system of government and made it United States of America system of government. The governance of a free society comes from our people. How come we're the only ones that can't live in a free society? We live under apartheid and genocide. So that has to change. We're celebrating Canada, 150 years. We're celebrating Canada. What have we Anishinaabe people got to celebrate? 150 years of apartheid and genocide? And the suicides of our people the murdering of our women, the destruction of our rights, our lands. We're asked to give up even our sacred site. The developers say, you have no rights, we're taking it over. The city of Ottawa, I took them to court. The city of Ottawa says, Indigenous rights don't apply to the city of Ottawa. I go, really? Well, I'll let you know, I may take you to court, but I'm judging you in your actions. Indigenous rights do not apply to the city of Ottawa, the mayor and councillors of the city of Ottawa. I thought that governments were to protect the rights of all individuals. How come the whole government is designed to take away my rights? So I don't want to, in a sense, hurt anybody in this process. I don't want anybody to feel bad. It's not my intention. It's just that when I went to university in Texas, there was inscribed in front here, which we would say over and over again in order to integrate the school. There was this statement in stone written across the library. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make ye free. I'm telling you the truth. Most Canadians do not know that they are practicing crimes against humanity as defined in the Criminal Code of Canada, adopted in 2000 in the War Measures Act. They don't realize that they're practicing crimes against humanity towards our people. That's the first thing that people have to realize. That the rule of law is, by the state, should apply to everyone, including the state. So how come it doesn't apply to our people? What did we do except be different? Instead of being patriarchal or matriarchal? Instead of being dominion over earth, we are the earth. Why should our difference in our worldview have us be subject to be ghettoized, penalized, destroyed, marginalized? The racism in this country that our people have to put up with is intolerable. I just come from New Brunswick. The community used to call Big Cove, I can't pronounce their Mi'kmaq word for it now, but 20 years ago I served them. I came to the community. They had no hope. But finally they got 13 young people through high school. This 13 young people that graduated in high school saw no future in Canada. The whole graduating class committed suicide. People up north, just 2 people right now, I was reading of kids in Quebec commit suicide. The coroner ruled it. The coroner said they committed suicide because of apartheid. That's what he said. But in my workings, I was asked by the elders to take on the white paper, Pierre Elliott Trudeau white paper, Indian control of Indian education. put Indigenous rights in the Constitution. And so we took on Prime Minister Trudeau and Chrétien at the time. And they ended up by listening and changing the system, putting Indigenous rights in the Constitution. So people can people can, and they made a difference. Getting control of education so we could bring back our language and culture. So there were people in the government that did not look at us as a threat. They looked at us as other fellow human beings. You know, we have to love people more. We need love in the lives of people. We need more loving, caring, and respect for people. How can you go to a reserve? I just opened a school on Friday. Yeah, it was Friday. It took 10 years to get a school. I invited you to get a school like we finally got a school, and the minister there, the deputy minister there was there, the minister of Forestry was there, everybody was there. It was great. But it was for those kids. Why should it take 10 years for them to get a school for their kids? You know, why do the kids get less money than other kids? Why are we so marginalized? Because we care about the oil companies, the forestry companies, the mining companies, and their profits and their success more than the people that are in these communities that suffer the burdens of the exploitation. Who's going to stand up for our people? When I was in the South, in the human rights movement, yes, our colored folks, we all stood up. They all stood up. But they couldn't have made it without the white folks standing up with them, going against their parents, going against their brothers and sisters, and walking with the colored community for justice. It couldn't have been done without the people that had the heart and the spirit enough to want justice for those people. So it takes you to stand with the corporations to make it happen. They can't do it by themselves. They are a minority in their own country. You have to help. You have to change it.
That's a beautiful place to stop for now, although I think we could listen to you all day. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the turnout here and the turnout in the regions and the time we've taken today is just a testimony of how hungry we are for your words and for your wisdom, and how much we deeply, deeply appreciate your time here.
Thank you.
And it's such a great honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you.